Are we survivors dreaming of being killers, or killers dreaming of being survivors? Such philosophical concerns are by necessity abstract, and yet some of us can find concrete proof of the nature of our existence when we travel into the unknown. Tonight's episode, The Creature from Greenville. To truly know who the creature from Greenville is, we have to ask but one question.
Who is your daddy, and what does he do?
And what does the unknown do exactly? We need to understand this part before just jumping right into a game. The unknown possesses the power of UVX and hallucinations. The description on the power is as follows. Press the power button to charge UVX. Once ready, press the attack button to launch UVX, a bouncing projectile which creates a blast area upon impact. Survivors become hindered if touched by UVX while airborne. Survivors touching the blast area become weakened. Weakened survivors lose health states if touched by blast areas. Survivors lose weakened by successfully staring down the unknown. And now for the special ability, the hallucinations. The unknown will intermittently create hallucinations. Hallucinations cannot be created while charging UVX, performing interactions, or in proximity to map objects like hooks. Whenever survivors are touched by blast areas or otherwise become weakened, the next hallucination spawn time decreases by 10 seconds. The unknown can teleport hallucinations, leaving behind a temporary decoy. Survivors can remove hallucinations from the trial with a dispel ability. Weakened survivors take longer to dispel. If dispel is not completed, survivors become weakened and trigger killer instinct. Some details that are important that the power doesn't list for you is the charge time for the UVX shot is 1 second, and the cancellation cooldown time is 0.85 seconds. It should be also noted if you cancel this at 20% charge or 0.2 seconds, the cancellation cooldown does not apply. There's also a 2-second launch cooldown time each time that the UVX is shot. Whether you're shot as a hit or a miss, it'll still take 2 seconds for the tentacle to fully go back into your neck. Something else important to note about the UVX for both survivors and killers is the effect radius is 2.25 meters of the blast, as well as has a 0.2 second linger time after it evaporates. As for the hallucinations, they have a spawn timer of 45 seconds, which can be significantly reduced per each survivor who's affected by the weakened status. For 1 weakened survivor, it'll be 36 seconds. For 2 weakened survivors, 26 seconds. For 3 weakened survivors, 19 seconds. And for 4, 13 seconds. With a spawn animation that takes 3 seconds to complete. These spawns will continue to be on a timer throughout the match, and spawn time will be indicated by the pink aura that you see on the sides of your screen. Once ready, this will turn into a yellow cloud instead, as well as play a sound effect that will also help alert the player to when it's ready. There's however 5 spawn restrictions that aren't exactly talked about in the power description. The first one being generators and pallets. You cannot place a hallucination within 1.75 meters of either of these. Hooks have a 2.15 meter restriction. Hatch and exegates have a 3 meter restriction. Hook survivors have a 12 meter restriction. And hallucinations have a 14 meter restriction. One last important thing to note about the hallucinations before moving on to the teleport. Hallucinations have an 8 meter aura reveal range. This means even through walls, survivors will be able to find potential teleport spots for the unknown, and it's highly recommended to get rid of these as soon as possible. Small details to note about teleport is it has a minimum distance of 3 meters, a maximum distance that has no restrictions. The teleport duration lasts for 0.3 seconds, the teleport space cooldown being 25 seconds, and a movement speed penalty of 1.7 seconds, which for any confusion refers to the slowdown that you may feel once you first teleport. And lastly, the weakened state, which comes only from UVX shots or from trying to dispel a hallucination and not completing the action. Once afflicted by this status, the survivor needs to stare down the unknown for a total of 10 seconds. Interesting thing to note that it will help both survivors and killers understand this interaction between the two is there is a 1.25 second buffer in place. This buffer prevents the interruption of staring down the unknown when only briefly losing sight of them. So if you've ever had interactions where the survivor was able to get rid of weakened, but you clearly could not see them and they clearly couldn't see you, That's because they only needed about 1 more second left to stare you down, and the buffer was able to give that time to them. The maximum removal distance of weakened for staring down the unknown, it can be up to 25 meters away, so you don't need to be super close, but you do need to be at least a mid-range away if you want to remove it safely. You may learn a harsh lesson. If you go looking for a creature, it may come looking for you. And such quests always bear fruit when you dive deeper into the unknown. Tonight's episode, The Lost Companion. Now that we've gone over all the basics, it's time for us to jump into an actual match and see how all of what we've discussed actually applies. Upon spawning in, you will notice 3 icons at the bottom left of your screen, each representing 3 parts of your power. Starting from the left, you have UVX that has a 7-second cooldown, the middle is your teleport, which has a 25-second cooldown, and on the right, your hallucinations that has a 45-second cooldown. You will also notice the pink aura on the sides of your screen that will eventually turn yellow as well once the hallucination bar is also full. Getting back to the chase on screen, we just weakened Feng and she's looking to use her balanced landing. Instead of going for a shot as quick as possible, we wait for her burst of speed to end to land a perfect follow-up shot. Now in this scenario, we're met with the other Feng appearing and having 2 choices. Either continue our chase we're already on, or we can swap targets. In this case, early in the game, I choose to swap. You may be asking why, but the reason is simple: weakened. Every second that we have survivors remaining weakened is more pressure in the match for us due to reducing our spawn timer, not only from the weakened passive, but also from the seconds removed from the timer for freshly weakening a survivor. And because if I was to down our first chase target immediately, they would lose the weakened status, so it can be beneficial to play your early game in more of a hit and run style of play, and depending on your circumstances. As more weakened survivors equals more hallucinations, and more hallucinations means more map dominance. Unfortunately here, we end up missing our first shot on her, but thankfully, she doesn't gain much distance on us and we're able to still land a basic attack. She then, with her burst of speed, makes her way over to this loop. Most survivors will typically hug walls to save time, as that's what most people will do against any other killer. For Unknown though, this is a huge plus for us, as it can usually be a safe guess most people will do this, and we can land an easy hit by shooting a shot next to a wall, as you can see here. Fortunately, we managed to hit another M1, so we don't need to wait for our UVX cooldown to come back up this time. And remember, even during our downtime while carrying Feng to a nearby hook, our Feng from earlier is still weakened, continuing to reduce our hallucination timer down. We're also lucky enough that we find her almost immediately upon hooking and get her down too within seconds. Skipping ahead a bit, after our second hook, we make our way to the main building generator. This is where perks like Nowhere to Hide shine on the Unknown, as kicking this gen not only reveals the survivor to the side near a kick, but the 2 survivors' auras through the wall of the shack that we teleport to, enabling us an easy shot on the corner of the wall to re-weaken the survivor who just got off the hook. We let Feng go as she continues to give us more time reduction and chase after the Nia. We miss our first attempt at trying to hit a long-range snipe, but that's okay. Don't be discouraged when this happens to you. It happens all the time to me, and it will probably happen to you too. But the important mindset to have while going into the match is to have what I like to call the fuck it we ball attitude. Simply meaning, just like in life, shoot the shots that you don't even think will hit, because you never truly know what might land. And just like that, we try another long-range snipe, and it's a direct hit. Another important thing to note at this time, we see the sides of my UI are yellow, and our hallucination bar is full, meaning we're ready to spawn another. You'll notice another important thing we talked about in our previous section about spawn restrictions. In this case, we're standing within 14 meters of another hallucination. So while actively chasing players, always take note of when your spawns are ready, and plan ahead if possible, of where you need to cover more ground on the map, as throughout this match, you'll notice how we take advantage of our spawn's positioning. We managed to catch up to Nia, and see she's making a beeline to the far right, and are able to secure an easy follow-up shot slightly ahead of her pathing. Because we have a hallucination directly in the center of the map, we're able to easily get right back to searching for a new target across the map. Thankfully, it doesn't take us too long to find our unweakened Fung again, and manage to apply weakened once more. I will note here I should have M1'd her instead of using UVX, as it just ends up leading to a much longer chase due to me missing the follow-up shot. But honestly, hey, it's important at the end of the day to realize when you need to just M1 and when to use the power. You may also be wondering as to why in this instance, instead of running around the loop, I'm standing still instead. That's because once you weaken someone, you want to hide your belly at all costs.
My belly!
Yes, your belly. Believe it or not, is actually the hitbox that the survivors need to see to be able to remove weakened. If you stand still behind walls and tall objects like upright pallets, you can prevent survivors from removing the status and stalling out for your next shot to come back, thus giving you more attempts to hit them. Unfortunately here though, this doesn't really work, and it won't work at every loop, but there are scenarios where it will. Sometimes even letting the survivor gain some distance instead of removing weakened can be the better option for you in the long run. So never really be afraid to give your opponent a chance to run a little, sometimes it leads to an easier shot opportunity. Kicking the gen, we proc Noire to hide and briefly see someone going for the save before teleporting. Thankfully we still have enough range to land a shot at the hook. We miss her follow-up shot, but it ends up working out for us as we continue to chase Fung. We find Sheva trying to dispel her shack hallucination, and instead quickly smack her to interrupt applying weakened and injuring her before she can even react. We also hit a long-range follow-up shot for an easy down, letting the Fung go for now. Skipping ahead a bit, we find another Fung in the main building. Managing to land a shot, I decide to not continue following her into the loop, and instead look to fire a shot from elevation instead. I see that she beelined for the backside of the building and managed to completely catch her off guard from above with a drop shot, showing how effective you can be by pretending to leave your target and instead look for more of a creative shot instead. After our first survivor of the match has died, we use our hallucination to get to the complete opposite side of the map in less than a second, and find not only one, but all 3 remaining survivors and land a shot weakening everyone. Had I already spawned a hallucination prior to this though, I would have gotten 30 seconds off our timer immediately. This however causes all of them to scatter. I miss my follow-up shot after hitting Nia and make the mistake of going back to the shack to see where the other 2 had run off to. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to hide myself in time to prevent them from removing weakened. However, after an additional miss, I do manage to land a snipe on Fung, and decide to teleport back to the main building to reassess my surroundings. Not even a second upon teleporting, I run right back into our friend Sheva. She was heading our way and I managed to re-weaken everyone at this point, and follow up another shot on her heading all the way back to shack again. I see the Fung looking to remove weakened and I immediately hide from her sight, attempting but missing another shot on her. Placing a hallucination right next to the shack, knowing I will likely be back this way again, I decide to teleport back to the main building, and lo and behold, our friend Sheva found her way back there too, landing us an easy down just seconds after arriving. After hooking Sheva, I place a hallucination at the top of the main building so I can use it for future scouting of the map, and while taking a look around at my surroundings to see if anyone may be coming my way, I spot Fung and manage to hit a snipe out the window. But that's not all though.
But wait! There's more!
She may be far distance away from us and feels she's safe, but remember, we have hallucinations. Watching exactly where she is going from the window, waiting for my UVX cooldown to come back, without further hesitation, I teleport directly to the hallucination in her pathing, causing her to panic and landing an easy follow-up shot on the window, which we make sure to shoot at the bottom so it will instantly detonate the shot and not bounce off, causing a miss. After hooking, we place a hallucination back in the middle of the map and return back to our upstairs hallucination to get yet another scout of the map to see where we want to go next. Barely seconds later, we find Nia hiding upstairs with us dropping off with balanced landing. We adjust our shot accordingly so the survivor's speed boosts right into it for an easy injury. Using the speed from her injury, she attempts to rescue her teammate from her hook, who unfortunately as she arrives, had given up early. Luckily, once again, we run into Sheva and have a bit of a chase that consists of a lot of silly misses from yours truly, but manage to get her in the end. Now with 3 dead, the hatch spawns and we teleport back to the shack area of the map to check and see if it had spawned there, unfortunately coming up short. Thankfully though, within seconds of checking the shack, I see crows flying up in the distance and hear the hatch as I continue to approach. I arm a UVX shot, anticipating the survivor hears it too. And you guessed it, there they were. And before they could hop into the hatch, we got a direct hit, not only knocking them down, but causing them to backflip as well, giving us even enough time to close the hatch and the match out as well with a Mori. Most of us have felt its shadow on us, a shiver down your back, a glimpse from the corner of the eye. You can't find it on purpose, but take a wrong turn, and you may find your way into the unknown. Tonight's episode, Intolerable Hunger. Now that we've covered all the basics and applied them to an actual match scenario, it's time to cover the advanced tips and tricks that may have not been seen in our previous section or fully highlighted. First up, the importance of prioritizing UVX shots over basic attacks. In most chase scenarios, you should be looking to UVX shot over basic attacking, as doing so can potentially cut chase time almost in half. We have two scenarios here, the first being a successful shot on a weakened healthy target, versus our second being a missed shot on a weakened healthy target, from both the killer's perspective and a third person's perspective of the same chase being played out. As you can see, landing two back-to-back successful shots will give you a rough average chase time of just over 11 seconds. Now let's look at that chase again, but this time when we miss our first shot.
Let's do it again. I wasn't looking.
Because our unknown missed their initial UVX shot due to the survivor double backing, they were forced to hit the survivor with a basic attack instead, giving the survivor plenty of distance and time to remove weakened, forcing the unknown to shoot an extra shot and having to wait on the UVX cooldown twice. This gives us a total average of just over 20 seconds, almost doubling our successful chase time. I do want to note as well that in more practical game scenarios, these times may vary. These are more examples to simply show realistically how much time can be saved from successful shots. If you are still learning and you are struggling with your power, it is okay to basic attack too. Just keep practicing your shots and you will continue to see positive results. Next up, we have mind gaming teleports while mid-chase with survivors. Hallucinations don't just provide us teleports to get across the map. They also can assist us mid-chase at loops as well. Let's take a look at an example. If we pause things right here for a moment, you will see that we stand still to make sure our hallucination spawns exactly where we need it. Not too far from the pallet, but not too close that the spawn restriction kicks in and prevents us from placing it. Our survivor takes damage from her UVX shot and starts to panic as they see the hallucination we just placed becomes active. Unsure of what to do, they decide to vault the pallet and end up getting hit by our basic attack. Let's play this chase out one more time. Only this time, let's see when the survivor doesn't panic at the sight of the hallucination. As you can see, even when teleporting, we just do the opposite as our previous chase. In this case, we choose to teleport instead of pretending we will, and it lets us basic attack first, then we can get the UVX down instead of UVX shotting first into a basic attack down. At the end of the day, both scenarios will still give you a down in roughly the same time. It's up to you to know when and when not to teleport, as smarter survivors will try to mind game you by pretending to vault and see if they can bait out your teleport.
That's bait. Don't take
Don't
bait.
take the bait, huh?
Don't you take that.
Next up is one of the most important things to learn with the unknown. We're going to discuss and show examples of the different types of UVX shots. The faster you learn as many of these, the faster you will see massive improvements in your matches, both playing as and against the killer. Accompanying in-game footage, I thought it might also be helpful to give an extra visual description with crudely drawn examples in paint. And yes, before you ask, I did do these with my mouse in 2 minutes. And thank you. My mom always told me I was a talented artist.
Graphic design is my passion.
To start things off, a UVX shot will always bounce once before detonation. Typically, most surfaces, including the ground, are most often flat, which will cause the shot to do as it's intended. For clarity reasons, we'll call this a bounce shot, since you can use it to bounce off floors and walls and sometimes to land shots around corners you wouldn't be able to without it. However, we can manipulate this using our environment to instantly detonate and make our shot spread further around our environmental walls and obstacles. We'll call these instant detonate shots, or instadet shots for short. Think back to your math class. And don't worry, we're not using sine, cosine, or tangent despite what your teacher said. We're thinking about angles. Most commonly in this case, 90-degree angles. Most people in the case of a window vault will shoot around the area of the window to hit a vaulting survivor. This isn't quite how you want to do it, as your shot not only has a chance to bounce further away from the wall, but also has a chance to go in a more unpredictable path and miss entirely. What you want to do is aim for the 90-degree angle. In this case, it's the angle between the wall and the floor. This ensures a larger blast radius on the other side of the wall, as well as a faster detonation time, usually even catching survivors using finesse for that extra vault speed. You can also use this same idea with pieces of the environment in loops. Look for any weird angles you can shoot your shot at. In most cases, aiming for something near the center of the loop ensures not only that your blast radius fills most of the tile, but it also detonates faster, making it more difficult for the survivor to react. There's also one more very important use for this shot. In fact, this shot will help you counter your own character's counterplay. I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out.
I'm not crazy! Ah!
Smart survivors who are weakened will double back into you to avoid a UVX shot, as you saw in the UVX priority section of this episode. Using the information we just talked about with looking to use our environment to manipulate our shot, we can apply this same logic to when survivors run at us. Normally, we can't shoot directly at our feet. It goes a couple meters in front of us, making running at us sometimes a survivor's safest option. But by looking at our surroundings, if there's anything beside you you can shoot at, chances are, if there is, you can use that to have your shot land directly on you, exploding the radius right at your feet, catching that survivor right off guard. It may also end up leading to a quick double tap with your basic attack, as the survivor in most cases will gain less distance ahead of you due to them being right beside you and not expecting your shot to injure them. Another shot that takes your unknown skills to the next level with a similar idea to our previous environment shots is the ceiling or floor shots. In the case of ceiling shots, we can either look for those 90-degree angles, or if we want to hit in a different spot away from a wall, we look for other angles and pieces of the environment to almost shove our shot into, so to speak. This way, our shot will instantly detonate upon contact with the ceiling. As for floor shots, these are used far less, as only in a few maps do we have elevation low enough to score hits on survivors. Most commonly in the houses of Haddonfield or in the preschool that we have on screen. There are definitely others that can work, and the only way you'll find them all is simply by experimenting in your matches. It's a helpful trick to have up your sleeve in finding the spots that can work and throw off even the best of players. Floor shots are done as exactly the way you'd think, by simply just shooting at the floor, aiming your bounce towards the area you think your target will be. No hassle with angles, but a different way of using your environment to your advantage. The last shot on our list has a couple names, but my go-to name is the skee ball shot. Much like the classic arcade game, we're using the same principle, rolling a ball up a ramp to hit our target area. In this case, we're using an incline like a pallet or a car window as a makeshift ramp. Shooting at our incline allows our shot's momentum to go roughly half the distance of an average shot, while using the bounce to not go further, but shorter distance instead. This shot can be used for many creative hits on different tiles, so give it a go and see what trick shots you can do. An honorable mention that isn't exactly a specific shot, but something else helpful to look for are choke points. Simply put, those times you're chasing someone and it's physically impossible for them to move left or right, almost guaranteeing you a free shot. So try to look for those opportunities to herd survivors into those types of scenarios, because you will almost always come out on top. This next tip is one we mostly covered in our last section, hiding your belly. It's a name simply to help understand the unknown's hitbox that survivors need to have visible in order to remove weakened. If you're able to obstruct a survivor's view of the lower 70% of your body, you're able to prevent them from removing weakened. Even if this means sitting still, hiding behind a pallet, this allows you to have more chances to shoot them with your UVX without worry the survivor removing the status. The final tip we're going to be discussing comes from my friend Brandon. Some of you may also know as Wispfell on Twitch and YouTube. Also a fellow unknown main who's just as passionate about the character and has made many videos on their channel that I highly recommend. This tip is what to look out for if you want a way to be able to tell when survivors are dispelling hallucinations just by looking at the aura. This is a direct quote from Brandon describing what to look out for. When a survivor is dispelling a hallucination, there is a visually distinct twitch animation that is different than the unknown's idle animation. This twitch animation is particularly discernible around the leg area. This detail, while small, can even be seen through walls with auras. I think it's noteworthy, however, should not be paid too much attention to, as it is very difficult to catch, especially from far distances. It's just a valuable tell you may notice in your matches. All the tips we've discussed this episode will help take your unknown knowledge to the next level, making you the difference between a good unknown and a great unknown. We take the facts of our existence for granted, unaware that they are merely a thin veneer of desperate self-delusion, covering a vast cosmos of madness and horror. Too often these stars align into the unknown. Tonight's episode, Return to Sender. We've talked a lot about how to play as the unknown, but now it's time for us to talk about how to play against the unknown. Across this episode, we'll be discussing 6 important tips that will increase your win rate, starting with the importance of dispelling. Dispelling is a survivor's primary method of removing the unknown's pressure. If you're ever in a scenario where you're not actively in a chase and you see a hallucination nearby, taking 4 seconds out of your time to dispel can save you and a teammate in the near future. Removing these teleportation options from the unknown prevents them from either getting around the map faster or cutting off you and a teammate in a future or present chase.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I didn't do fucking shit!
However, this isn't the only use of dispelling. This is a more niche or situational use, but if the killer is tunneling one of your teammates and you're looking to distract the killer, try failing a dispel. You'll be surprised how often an unknown will break chase to even just go for you since you're giving them a free hit. Keep in mind, this can be risky. I wouldn't suggest doing this every game by any means, but it's a good tip to keep in mind in those niche scenarios as it can save a teammate's life. Speaking of removing pressure from the unknown, let's talk briefly about removing weakened. Sometimes an unknown will play in a hit and run playstyle to get the most benefit out of the passive hallucination timer from weakened. As a survivor, we want to remove this time reduction from the killer as soon as possible. This also ensures the killer will have to re-weaken us in the future, and reduces the chances of us getting hit by the long-range lob shot.
What do you even mean? Get me out.
Depending on the state of generators, it can be more beneficial in the long run to just power through and not look to actively seek out the unknown if they are quite far from you, as the killer will benefit from the timer off the objective as well. These last few tips are going to help us in our chases, starting with double backing. Similar to how one counters against the nurse in chases, survivors can also counter the unknown by double backing as well, though there is a slightly different method compared to the nurse, and should only be used while the survivor is healthy, and in most cases, weakened. Let's take a look at a couple bad examples first of what happens when you run towards the unknown injured. As you would expect, the unknown can simply choose to wait on the UVX to cancel and basic attack the survivor, knocking them down, or may miss the shot and still get the basic attack down, as there will be next to no distance between them and the survivor once they recover from the missed shot. I will add on those missed shots or UVX cancel times. There are some scenarios depending on how close it is to a pallet where the survivor can get away, but it's still highly recommended to not run at the killer injured, as those times it works in the survivor's favor are quite rare. Now, let's look at good examples of double backing into the unknown while healthy. Our main purpose for double backing into the unknown, while on a majority of occasions will give the killer an injury, it will not give them a UVX injury. It gives the survivor more than enough time to get distance on the killer, as well as remove weakened if they already were.
Don't mess with the sea life.
See you later, stinky.
It's highly recommended only to use double backing if you are weakened, as the main purpose is to ensure the unknown has to waste more chase time using basic attacks instead of 3 UVX shots. If you want a refresher of just how much extra time you can extend a chase on average with this, refer back to our previous episode in the section covering prioritizing UVX shots. Next up, body blocking. Now you may be saying, Panda, I already know how to body block. Why are you trying to teach me this? That, my friend, is a great question. We're going to take a look at a bad example and a good example of body blocking. Through these examples, the answer to your question should be well answered. Let's take a look at the bad example. As you can see in our bad example, while body blocking in the doorway is the usual correct way we'd want to body block, in this scenario it doesn't stop our unknown's UVX shot from hitting the survivor in the initial chase. Now here's the good example of body blocking. Proper body blocking against the unknown is a two-way street between teammates. As a survivor in chase, you still need to be mindful of the UVX shot, as it pierces through survivors. The shot can lose some momentum traveling through survivors, but not enough to have the shot miss its initial destination. If you want your teammates' body blocking to not be wasted, then make sure to make it impossible for the unknown to easily line a shot up and break line of sight. This ensures you get away as well as your teammate, leaving the unknown to have to pick and choose what target they truly want. Let's talk briefly about baiting teleports. Just like what we went over about double backing, this is similar to another way one would bait a nurse, having her blink too far to stop your pathing. A similar mindset can work for the unknown by mind gaming you're running towards a hallucination and double backing before the initial teleport. This may not work every time, but has the potential to give you more distance in chase, as well as waste the unknown's 25-second teleport cooldown. The same method can work in loops as well. As shown in a chase in our previous episode, we showed how this method can work for the unknown's favor. The result can go in the survivor's favor as well, if the unknown fumbles their teleport. It should be noted that while they are helpful tips to think about, in some scenarios can be a potential coin toss of who wins the mind game when it comes to specific loops and the hallucination's placement. Last and one of the most important tips I can't stress enough: don't hug walls.
No! 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 No!
I should of course clarify, don't hug walls unless you know UVX is on its 7-second cooldown. In most chases, smart survivors have learned to hug their pathing close to walls, ensuring that they can save a few seconds in chase, as taking wider turns can cost distance. While this is true, it does also leave you more vulnerable to UVX shots through the wall. If you're in a chase and you hear an unknown preparing a shot, back away from the wall and run a bit wider if you have to. Because if you're able to make them miss, you can greatly increase your chase time, either from the killer missing one of or even multiple shots, to go as far as forcing them to only go for basic attacks. This is one of the most common mistakes I see survivors make while in chase of the unknown, as hugging the wall against every other killer is usually the way to go. In this case, it only helps the killer. So the sooner you remember to break this habit against them, the sooner you'll see less UVX shots hitting you in future games. A letter. A fusion of communication, conscience, and uncompromising clarity of vision. A need so fundamental it permeates our very being. A survivor may be brought to their knees from a single heartbeat, finding themselves going into the unknown. Tonight's episode, The Mysterious Postcard. We've gone over all there is to know about the fundamentals of how to play as and against the unknown. The next step from here is to think about what perks and add-ons we should use. Starting with add-ons, I've put together a tier list that should help steer you in the right direction and help understand how strong or how weak specific ones are. First off, starting with the S tier add-ons, we have Iridescent OSS Report. This add-on reduces the cooldown duration of the teleport ability by 5 seconds, bringing it to 20 seconds. It also increases the lifetime of the decoy left behind by teleports for an extra 10 seconds, as well as adding a red stain and a terror radius to the decoy. OSS Report is the strongest add-on at the Unknown's disposal, due solely based on the teleport cooldown allowing the killer to traverse the map and cut players off more often. The terror radius created by the decoy is a nice addition as it allows for more mind games as well as more options for stealth. Our other S tier add-on is Captured by the Dark. This add-on causes all 4 survivors to start the trial in the weakened state, with the downside of reducing your hallucination spawns by 1, which means you can only have a maximum of 3 hallucinations on the map at a time instead of 4. The reason this add-on is also considered to be S tier is simply with how strong it is to start the match with everyone weakened. Referring back to what we've talked about in our previous episodes was how important the weakened status is. With all 4 survivors starting weakened, we start the trial with a 13-second hallucination spawn time. Not only that, but while spawning into the match we immediately will have a hallucination ready. This means within less than 30 seconds into the match, we will have placed all 3 of our hallucinations on the map, giving us immense amounts of pressure. And we'll continue to keep spawning more every 13 seconds. On top of the immediate and constant map-wide pressure we create from the start, we also can down every survivor with just 2 UVX shots, instead of 3 since everyone already is afflicted with the status. All these factors together are what easily puts this add-on at the top of our list. And if you're wondering why I placed Captured by the Dark underneath OSS Report, while the add-ons are both close in power, Captured by the Dark is a snowballing add-on. It creates all its pressure in the early game, while OSS Report is constantly strong throughout the entire match, giving it just a slight edge over Captured by the Dark on this list. Let's move on to the A tier add-ons, starting with Footprint Cast, a very simple but strong add-on that increases your 10-second hallucination spawn time reduction to a 15-second reduction each time the weakened status is applied, which, to clarify for any possible confusion, this only applies to the shot that applies weaken to a survivor, not the shots that injure or down survivors. This time reduction makes it so every 3 freshly weakened shots equals a hallucination spawn, as opposed to on average needing 5 seconds plus 4 successful shots to equal a hallucination. So quite similar to why OSS Report is so strong, Footprint Cast is in the same vein, giving the killer more map-wide pressure faster. Next up, we have Notebook of Theories. This add-on increases our hindered status that is applied to survivors from airborne UVX shots by 2 seconds, bringing the total up to 4 seconds. Once again, to clarify airborne shots, this simply means the projectile is directly passed through the survivor and is indicated by a sound prompt. This can happen most times you land a direct shot, but also happens fairly commonly on near misses. The reason this hinder is so strong is whether you are new or experienced on the killer, this 4-second hinder can land you basic attacks you wouldn't normally be able to get without it. It can be seen as a mistake eraser or an opportunity maker. Last up for the A tier, we have Obscure Game Cartridge. This add-on is essentially the Unknown's own personal fire-up, activated for 20 seconds after teleporting. It increases our breakable wall, pallets, and gen breaking speeds, as well as our window vaulting speed by 30%. This add-on's power speaks for itself. It's a mini fire-up in your pocket that's active on 20-second intervals when you use your teleport. The only thing that puts it below the previous 2 A tiers is the 25-second cooldown of our teleport, whereas the other add-ons only have a 7-second cooldown of UVX holding their effects down. Overall, a majority of A tier add-ons bring a lot of time reduction and strength to the Unknown's chase power, making all 3 solid additions to any build. Next up, B tier add-ons, starting with Vanishing Box. This add-on makes it so every time a generator is complete, the survivor who completes it becomes weakened. The downside, however, is it also increases our 45-second hallucination spawn time by 80%, adding an additional 36 seconds for a grand total of 81 seconds. While this may sound incredibly punishing, hitting our UVX shots consistently followed by survivors remaining weakened will greatly reduce this timer, making up for the downside. We can also make up for the downside of this add-on through the power of our next add-on, Front Page Article. This add-on reduces the spawn timer of your next hallucination by 50% after breaking a breakable wall or pallet. However, it should be noted this add-on isn't worded the greatest, as the 50% time reduction is not always 50% of the base spawn time, but rather 50% of the current time left before the next spawn. Meaning instead of removing 22.5 seconds each time, if we had 7 seconds left before our spawn timer, we would only remove 3.5 seconds instead. So while the effect is solid, you need to be mindful of your timer before kicking, as pallets and walls become a time reduction resource and may be more beneficial to keep in certain scenarios. Up next is Device of Undisclosed Origin. This add-on inflicts Oblivious to any survivor who enters the 8-meter aura range of a hallucination. This add-on makes it riskier for players to dispel hallucinations, as they will not get a terror radius while within the area. This allows for a more stealthy or hit-or-run style of play that the Unknown thrives on, as the risk of removing map pressure increases due to the survivor's reduced awareness. Lastly, for our B tier, we have Hypnotist Watch. This add-on, similar to Notebook of Theories, activates with airborne UVX shots, but instead of applying additional hinder, we apply 10 seconds of exhaustion to the survivor. By simply hitting direct hits, we can remove the chances of dealing with strong survivor perks like Dead Hard or Lithe, and once again, like Notebook, can be consistently applied every 7 seconds to multiple survivors. Starting for our C tier, we have Serum Vial. This add-on triggers the same way as Device, but much like Hypnotist Watch, applies exhaustion for 10 seconds instead of Oblivious to survivors who enter the 8-meter radius of our hallucinations. While on paper it does sound as good as Hypnotist Watch, but due to the fact that we're not always able to know when the effects of this add-on apply, this makes Watch more reliable as well as much more consistent, unfortunately leaving Vial unable to quite make the cut for B tier. Next up is Sketch Attempt, coming in at our strongest common add-on. This add-on applies the Oblivious status to survivors hit by UVX for 20 seconds. This add-on, much like Device and OSS Report, allows for more hit and run and stealth play opportunities. While it does have a solid effect, it doesn't help nearly as much as other B tier add-ons and above, but it still is consistent, keeping it at a solid high C. Following right behind, we have B-Movie Poster. This add-on applies the broken status to survivors who are damaged by UVX shots for 30 seconds. Once again, on paper, this sounds like a strong effect, but we need to keep in mind, the only value we will get from this effect in mid-chase is making the survivor unable to use a syringe. If we choose to leave the survivor, since they are unable to heal, they will instead work on generators. This is both the upside and downside to this add-on, as we don't exactly want to, encourage survivors to work on their objective, but it does help us give more opportunities to shoot lob shots at generators, and hopefully pick off those weakened targets. I'll also note this add-on can be particularly strong when paired with Captured by the Dark, as applying Broken to survivors right at the beginning of the trial can cause a lot of panic and help further the early game snowball. This next add-on has had some mixed opinions over the year. We're talking about Slash Backpack. This add-on allows you to shoot your UVX directly at hallucinations, causing them to detonate, and by doing so reduces the spawn timer of your next hallucination by 75%. While there is some good arguments to be made about the strength of this add-on, I personally, after many tests, have not found it to be worth using over any of the previously discussed add-ons. Its strength comes with the ability to reset our hallucinations by destroying hallucinations that may be in dead zones. The blast zone created by detonating hallucinations doesn't tend to add much, but you can get the odd situation where using it to detonate a shot where it normally wouldn't detonate can land you an extra hit. However, the chances of a survivor running next to a hallucination for this to work are extremely slim, as they're likely to get down from a teleport anyway. Our final C tier add-on is Blurry Photo. This add-on, much like Vanishing Box, used to be at the top of the tier list before the Unknown update back in September 2024. Blurry Photo grants us 15% faster recovery to our movement speed following a teleport. We already have a 15% base recovery, so this add-on gives us a 30% recovery overall, instead of as opposed to its original 50% recovery. While being a simple effect, it can help in situations that you need to follow up with a basic attack after teleporting. However, after its nerf from Glory, there isn't much value past that. There are many stronger options, leading Blurry Photo to fall flat compared to other add-ons. Now, for the bottom of the barrel, D-tier add-ons. We start things off with Rabbit's Foot. This add-on applies Hemorrhage to survivors damaged by UVX for 30 seconds. As well as charging our UVX shot, pools of blood will appear brighter. In other words, this add-on, much like Cartridge, is a built-in perk. Except instead of it being Fire Up and actually useful, it's Bloodhound, at the cost of slower movement speed, as the Bloodhound effect is only applied through holding our shot. The hemorrhage effect applied through this add-on, just like the B-Movie Poster, doesn't really help us in most cases, as it doesn't counter syringes, leaving it to feel very underwhelming, but stronger than the next few add-ons on this list. Speaking of next, we have Last Known Recording. This add-on reduces the aura range of our hallucinations by 25%, which is essentially reducing our 8-meter radius to a 6-meter radius. The only positive that comes from this add-on is a slight increase to potentially hiding our hallucinations easier. However, 2 meters is very unlikely to help us with doing so. This radius reduction also has anti-synergy with Device and Vial, as those apply their effects through survivors being within the radius. Overall, being a waste of an add-on slot. Next we have Victims Map. This add-on triggers Killer Instinct for 3 seconds on a survivor who successfully stares out in the unknown. Another simple, but underwhelming effect, with an upside of potentially finding survivors removing Weakened that may be hiding or mid-chase around corners due to the 1.25 second buffer. There isn't really anything else going for this add-on, as most times this effect activates is usually when the survivor's already been knocked down and remove Weakened that way. This puts Map just underneath Recording. Now for the weakest purple add-on, we have Homemade Mask. This add-on applies the blindness status to survivors who dispel a hallucination for 60 seconds. The biggest problem with this add-on is being able to tell when it is actually even active, as most scenarios you will not even see who is dispelling. But not only that, if there are cases that you do see who is, the blindness actually getting any form of value is abysmal, leading to this add-on feeling absolutely useless. Do you like doing convoluted side quests in your video games that ultimately lead to a lackluster reward? If the answer is yes, then look no further than our final add-on, the infamous Punctured Eyeball. This add-on inflicts deep wound to a weakened, injured survivor who completes the dispel action. Yup, you heard that right, weakened and injured. Unless your perk build is completely focused around making this add-on work, the chances of it activating are extremely low to almost never. On top of it all, the reward of deep wounds is very underwhelming in the grand scheme of it all. The only real upside to running this add-on is to brag to your friends that you actually had the effect successfully work in the rare occasion that it even does. With that said, Eyeball wins the award for most useless unknown add-on in the game, sitting at the bottom of our D tier list. Some of you may also have noticed one add-on was missing from our list, but it's for a very good reason. We're talking about Discarded Milk Carton. This add-on increases the bounciness of our UVX shot by 8%, as well as reduces the friction of our shot by 15%. Essentially, this add-on changes your UVX shot fundamentals, allowing for alternative bounce shots that a normal UVX shot can't quite reach. However, in a trade-off, this also can mess with your muscle memory you've built up over time, as most shots you've likely learned may serve to be more difficult to do due to the extra bounciness of your shot. This add-on was overall difficult to place in the tier list, as through my experience in the Unknown community, there is a large divide of players' opinions on this add-on. While some players like myself strongly dislike this add-on because it messes with muscle memory, and would probably place it in the D tier, there are also players that are almost a part of a religious milk carton worshipping cult that swear by this add-on, using it every time they play, easily putting it in an S+ tier. While I see a fair argument on both sides of the coin, when it comes to Milk Carton, I ultimately felt it was fair to make it its own milk tier, sort of separate from the list entirely, as I believe you, the viewer, should develop your own love or disdain for this add-on. Now that we've covered all the add-ons, let's go over some build suggestions for both fun and viable builds from myself and other fellow Unknown mains from the community. First up is the build I recommend to any newcomer to the Unknown, or players who have experience as well. This build uses Discordance, Nowhere to Hide, Monitor and Abuse, and Pop Goes the Weasel. Discordance gives the player information of when at least 2 survivors or more are working on a generator, and Monitor Abuse reduces our terror radius as well as reduces the chances of survivors pre-running. With this in mind, players can learn a visual understanding and develop the muscle memory needed to learn how to use their UVX shots effectively and how to properly aim on the fly. Nowhere to Hide and Pop Goes the Weasel also work hand in hand, as we get aura reading and generator slowdown whenever we kick a generator. Not only that, but if we kick a generator and teleport to a hallucination, we get not 1, but 2 separate aura readings as long as the teleport is done within 5 seconds. And our add-ons are Footprint Cast for the reduced hallucination spawn time, and Notebook of Theories for the extra hinder on direct hits, both rewarding the player for learning and landing direct hits. Our second build is more of a budget build. Again, using Monitor and Abuse for the reduced terror radius, Agitation for speedy hooks, Bitter Murmur for aura reading, and Hex Rune for our generator slowdown. And for add-ons, we go with Blurry Photo and Notebook of Theories, but any add-ons can be used along with this build. This build is mainly comprised of perks that most newer players will likely have early on, especially if they're on console, as most of those killers will come for free. And each one of the perks covers a good fundamental for players to learn. The next build is from a streamer, Harry Botter, who used this build on his unknown win streak. You can check him out over at his Twitch channel. The perks are Pop Goes the Weasel, Scourge Hook Pain Resonance, Barbecue and Chili, and Lethal Pursuer with any add-ons. Lethal Pursuer allows us to immediately find survivors at the start of the match, as well as extending our aura reveal time of Barbecue and Chili of survivors outside of a 40-meter radius from 5 to 7 seconds. While Pop Goes the Weasel and Pain Resonance give us plenty of generator slowdown for hooking survivors on Scourge Hooks and kicking generators. This build overall has a good balance between slowdown and aura reading, so if you're looking for something strong and straightforward, this may be a great build for you, as Harry had a lot of success with it. This next one also comes from a friend of mine, Revium, who you can also find on Twitch. They're an amazing killer main who's very knowledgeable, and one of the best when it comes to Trickster, the Unknown, and many other killers. The perks are Friends Till the End, Lethal Pursuer, Furtive Chase, and Nemesis, and the add-ons are Vanishing Box and Footprint Cast, though, once again, can be changed out for other add-ons for the player's preference. This build is an early game snowball build, as Lethal gives us early pressure on finding a survivor, and every time we hook a survivor we will get a new obsession and some haste thanks to Furtive Chase. Or, while being stunned, Nemesis will also swap our target and make them oblivious for some time. All while Friends Till the End, every time we hook a survivor will expose our obsession. With our hallucinations, it can give us easy access to reaching our obsession, creating quick snowballing downs, as no survivor is ever safe in the trial from being the next exposed obsession. This next build is one I like to refer to as an Area of Effect build, or AoE build for short. The perks are Forced Hesitation, Infectious Fright, Surge, and Dissolution, with Hypnotist Watch and Notebook of Theories. Once again, any add-ons of choice can be used. Forced Hesitation and in combination with Infectious Fright will reward us with knowledge of if survivors are nearby, but as well as if they are, they're slowed down with a movement speed penalty that might score us an additional down each time we've achieved a down. If that down is with a basic attack, we're also rewarded with gen regression in an area of effect around the down target due to Surge. Dissolution will also reward us for injuring players, as vaulting pallets will just break them immediately, creating more and more AoE pressures on the survivors. These next few builds are a bit more niche, starting with our basement build that uses Scourge Hook's Hangman's Trick and Monstrous Shrine, Iron Grasp, and Human Greed, with our add-ons being Divisive Undisclosed Origin and Serum Vial. Hangman's Trick gives us value every time we pick up a down survivor. We will get aura reading of all of our Scourge Hooks, including, most importantly, the basement hooks, created with Monstrous Shrine, which are our most important hooks that we use Iron Grasp to get survivors to the basement. We also use Human Greed as a sort of security camera of our basement, as it will reveal the aura of anyone who dares come close. Monstrous Shrine will allow these basement-dwelling survivors to die faster, but not only will they be guarded by the aura reading of Human Greed, but survivors will also have to deal with a hallucination on the stairs, that when a survivor gets near will become oblivious and exhausted due to the effects of both of our add-ons. Overall, making for a strong basement build comparable to a basement trapper. Next we have A Nurse's Calling, Hex Face the Darkness, Dominance, and Deathbound. Add-ons once again being completely up to the player. This build primarily will have survivors screaming on a consistent basis, while protecting our Hex Totem constantly and punishing anyone who dares try to heal, with either being revealed from A Nurse's Calling or Deathbound, making survivors scream more as well as inflicting them with obliviousness until the healer loses a health state. Build number 8 is a bit more of a complicated but fun build, using Dark Devotion, Unforeseen, Distressing, and Starstruck, with OSS Report and Device for the add-ons. Dark Devotion and Unforeseen allow us to constantly transfer our terror radius between the obsession, or a generator of our choosing. OSS Report also lets us create an additional terror radius, creating further confusion, as well as giving us 3 different opportunities for stealthy approach. Distressing increases the size of our radius, and Starstruck will expose all who are in the radius every time we hook another survivor. All of these together, if played correctly, will allow the player to position their terror radius anywhere they want on the map, at any given point, and exposing all the players who get caught up in the radius every time we hook someone, making for more easy downs and potential jump scares. Next is a more casual build, using Forever Entwined, Fire Up, A Nurse's Calling, and Predator, and any add-ons of the player's choosing. Simple and straightforward, this build uses Forever Entwined and Fire Up to build up stacks, increasing our pickup speed breaking speed, and vaulting speed over the course of the match. While Nurses and Predator are both very strong aura reading perks to hunt down survivors in and outside of Chase. Saving the best for last, we have my favorite build for the unknown: Order, Human Greed, Scourge Hook Jagged Compass, and Hangman's Trick. This build can use any add-ons, but something important but not necessary is our Anniversary Cake, as it will give us an additional chest in the match, to further strengthen our build as well as more blood points of course. Order creates 2 additional chests on the map, as well as giving us an extra notification when survivors attempt to tamper with our chests, which, with Human Greed, become vision points for us as survivors' auras will be revealed to us every time a survivor goes near them. Jagged Compass will allow the player to fill the map with Scourge Hooks, which combined with Hangman's Trick will give us almost map-wide vision by late game, combined with our chests every time we pick a survivor up. As it gets later in the match, more map-wide vision is created, allowing us constant surveillance of survivors' locations, as well as extra protection over our hallucinations, preventing survivors from dispelling undetected. Sleep. We all spend a third of our dreams in its soft embrace, somewhere between fantasy and oblivion. But dreams have a way of forcing themselves into reality, or into the unknown. Tonight's episode, Forgotten Dungeons. We've covered almost everything there is to know about the unknown. All that's left is the game's maps and the best shots on them. More specifically, a tier list covering our best to worst maps, accompanied by a compilation of shots for every map in the game, that are beneficial for every unknown player to know, and shots that survivors can be on the lookout for to actively avoid in future games. Some maps had multiple shots, where some barely had one at all. However, I still added a minimum of 1 shot per map, so some maps going forward will be very briefly spoken about, while others might have some more commentary. Let's start with my number 1 S tier maps, RPD East and RPD West. RPD is my number 1 pick for the unknown's strongest map, as it's an unknown main's wet dream. It simply has everything you can ask for. Enough space to do long-range lob shots, enclosed hallways for choke points, multiple floors to hit players from below, indoor elements that allow for stealth. There's so many trick shots and important shots on this map for unknown players to learn that I couldn't include all of them in the video, but I wanted to highlight some of my favorites and more important ones to learn. For our last S tier map, we have Midwich. Just like RPD, we have multiple floors to take advantage of, with hitting players from below, choke points with the long hallways, and stealth due to the indoor nature of the map. Honestly, what more could you really need from an S tier map? For A tier, my number 1 pick was Hawkins. Similar to our S tier maps, it has a majority of all the ingredients to make an S tier unknown map. The only thing that prevents it from joining the other S tier maps is due to it not having as many multi-floors, as well as the fact that they are see-through, so survivors have a little bit more chance to avoid your shots from below. However, Hawkins is always a great map to find yourself on. These next 5 maps on our list that take up a majority of the A tier on the list all have one thing in common that you will see as a common pattern. Starting with the newest addition to Dead by Daylight's maps, Ormond Mine. This map has very quickly become one of my personal favorites, but for very good reasons. It has interesting, unique structures that the unknown thrives on, and open space. But most importantly, a main building that, if we can pressure with hallucinations, allows us a sniping roost for the match, as most generators out in the distance are close enough to the main building to be shot at, allowing the unknown to be a constant looming threat from close and far range. Next up, Haddonfield, which has both a strong main building for us to take advantage of, as well as multiple houses with multiple floors, allowing for consistent floor and ceiling shots, and a wide open area allowing for snipes. This next one might come as a shock to some, but if you have been picking up on the trend, you'll see why Erie made it to A tier. Much like our last 2 A tier maps, this map is wide open and has a strong main building that allows for cross-map sniping. If you can place a hallucination in the top floor and spread your other 3 out across the map, you will have complete map dominance a majority of the time, as once the shack generator is finished, there isn't too many places survivors can hide from you that you can't shoot at from main. Continuing the main building trend with Sanctum of Wrath, this small shrine in the center allows for easy snipes across a majority of the map, and an added bonus with the large tree foliage not having a hitbox to obstruct your UVX shots. Our final main building map is Dead Dog Saloon. This main building can be a little harder to pressure compared to our other maps, as it is a very strong tile for survivors, but despite that, it still allows for ample sniping and scouting, and the map being fairly open, once again, allows for easier shots with a few unique tiles that we can take advantage of. The last A-tier map on our list is Coal Tower. Not a whole lot to say on this map past what most players would say playing any other killer. It's a balanced map with a fairly solid main building that we're able to do all of our previously discussed shots on. Nowhere near the level of scouting or sniping, unfortunately, as the last few maps, but overall, it's generally a map you won't have too many troubles on. Next up, B-tier map, starting with Wrecker's Yard. This is typically the map of choice for most competitive matches, as it's seen as the most balanced to play on both sides. It's a decent sized map with fairly simple tiles and common unique structures found across all the Wraith's realm. That brings us next to the Sheltered Woods, very similar to Wrecker's Yard, but with Macmillan common tiles and a fairly easy to play around small main building with floor shots. Next we have the Game. This map is a solid B tier due to a lot of potential for floor shots and stealth. However, at times, it can be frustrating due to the amount of pallets on the map that can make for boring pre-drop after pre-drop matches. Next up, Ormond Resort. Similar to Dead Dog Saloon, this map features a main building that's good for us if we can control it. But it is a bit difficult to do because of how strong of a survivor tile it is. What puts this below Dead Dog is the sheer size of the map and the roof around the balcony limiting the range of snipes from the main building. Moving along from the cold exterior of Ormond to the cold interior of Larry's, we have one of the most unique maps on this list. Larry's has the stealth approach, and mostly a handful of unique corner shot tiles. However, due to its cramped nature, it makes long-range shots very limited, leaving the player to adapt a bit to the map. While limiting in some aspects, it opens up more opportunities, making it a solid map for us. Temple of Purgation, simply put, another large but fairly open map with another easy to navigate main building. Thompson House, just like Temple, is also large but open, with a main building that allows for sniping and a couple unique shots on the inside. Rotten Fields, simple, open, and your only real enemy is corn. Nothing overly unique and interesting here, but shouldn't give you any troubles. Rancid Abattoir, very similar to Rotten Fields. It just has an added main building, doesn't really have much for exciting shots though, unfortunately. And lastly for the B tiers, Father Campbell's Chapel. Straightforward with the rest of our main buildings, it has opportunities for sniping and a couple unique shots around the main building and the carnival, but unfortunately there isn't many windows you can really look out, so it's not as strong as our previous maps. The leading map of C tier is Nostromo Wreckage. Simply put, it's an open map with an easy to navigate main building and small unique structure. You may ask, why is this even C tier with that in mind? That comes from the size of the map as well as the unique texture of most loops found in the map, as these loops can either create opportunities for unique shots or completely leave you high and dry with many missed shots. Greenville Square has most of its fun, unique shots in its main building, where there are many ceiling shot opportunities. The map is fairly open. However, due to the amount of trees throughout the map, it can prevent a lot of snipe opportunities you would similarly have on B tier and higher maps. Though thankfully, due to the nature of the unique tiles that are simple to play around, makes up for this fact, keeping it near the top of C tier. Garden of Joy suffers from the same curse of Greenville Square. With its fun main building shot potential, it too is a similarly large map with some easy tiles to play around. However, places lower than Greenville solely due to its potentially rough tile and main. Ironworks of Misery continues the trend of big open map plus large main building that has potential for unique shots. Otherwise, there's nothing really special here. Shattered Square keeps it going, large open map, and small main building with a couple neat shots. Protoss Asylum dips back into the same idea of our A-tier maps with a main building that can be used for sniping. However, it has limited visibility compared to the others, and is just needlessly large, but thankfully fairly open like the most of the others. Forgotten Rune's only appeal comes from its D&D style underground, as most chases you will have a fairly easy time down there. However, if this map didn't have pesky portals that also grant survivors short periods of invincibility, this map would probably be much higher on the list. Cowshed. Honestly, it's just a worse version than our other previously discussed farm maps, with a barn tile that doesn't really deliver anything relatively interesting to play around, and it can just be difficult to play around at times in general. The rest of the map is just corn and basic farm tiles. Torment Creek, similarly to Cowshed, suffers the same fate of a boring main structure, and just a bunch of corn while being needlessly large. The only saving grace of these two maps is solely laying on the fact of how balanced most farm tiles are. Groaning Storehouse didn't want to drop the trend of boring main building on a needlessly large map, only keeping its spot in C tier for the balanced tiles. Suffocation Pit was a struggle to find something unique and useful shot-wise. Most of this map is a center area of tiles chaining together with a main structure that's strong for survivor. With the size of the map on top of that, it's the basic Macmillan tiles that help keep this map afloat. Badham Preschool is naturally a difficult map for most killers. However, there are a lot of potential for unique shots that can ease the pain this map can cause. Though due to most of them being in the main building and others being situational at times, I couldn't move this map any higher. Mother's Dwelling is needlessly large with a couple ceiling shots in the main building, and limited sniping potential due to a lot of obstruction due to the massive trees blocking sight and shots. But with all this in mind, it isn't the worst of this list. Our D tier starts off with Gas Heaven. The only reason for it being at the top of the worst is some nice trick shots you could pull off in the main structure. Besides that, this map is large and an oversized header. And as you likely guessed from the start, Grim Pantry is low on our list. It's the swamp realm that's desperately needed to be reworked for a better experience on killer and survivor side. With a strong main building for survivors, the only thing that has going for it is how open the map is. The Pale Rose suffers from the same swamp curse and main building problems. The only shot I could find of importance was just where to line up your shot, almost guaranteeing a free hit for survivors entering the backside of the boat. Wretched shot. Large, annoying, but thankfully smaller main building, with the only thing keeping it in the spot being a cute cheeky shot through the hole in the wall that hits the generator. Blood Lodge is just Pallet City as most people know, and with how often players will pre-drop pallets and run to the next, the sheer amount of pallets and the size of the map makes for an unfun and usually boring game almost every time. Last on our D tier list is Azerov's Resting Place. I just genuinely could not find anything unique or remotely interesting on. Just another large map suffering from a similar game style as Blood Lodge and Suffocation Pit, but doesn't quite lower the bar to the level of our last two maps. The worst of the absolute worst, we have the F tier maps, Family Residence starting it off, which much like Azerov's has had nothing of remote interest in the way of viable or unique shots. It's large with many less than advantageous loops and either ends up being one of the most boring maps to navigate or frustrating to play. However, no map is as much of a nightmare and displeasure to play than our worst map on the list, Toba Landing. While there is a couple cool shots that can be done here, the amount of constant frustration from the horribly designed walls and tiles and other plants and constantly disruptive foliage that keeps rooting shots after shots just makes me want to literally end the match before I even start it. Most maps while playing, I will sometimes learn a new shot I can do. Toba has taught me the opposite. With how many shots and fun it surely denies every single time I'm brought to this godforsaken location. With that, here's our tier list in full. Once again, there are many more shots that were not featured in this compilation. I want to mostly highlight some of the more common and unique ones you as the unknown should practice and survivors should be looking out for. Magic, parlor tricks, smoke and mirrors. But for some, magic is more than that. It's a way of working the secret machinery of reality itself. More than one star can be seen going into the unknown. Tonight's episode, The Local Legend. Zoey Alexandria, best known in the Dead by Daylight community as the talented voice actress behind The Unknown. Zoey was born on November 14th, 1994 in Chicago, Illinois. Zoey was referred to as a visionary within the LGBTQ community. She was a classically trained vocalist who believed in helping others find their voice. She developed her own method for voice feminization, and personally knowing how painful it was to have a voice that didn't match who you are on the inside, she used her talents and was able to help many transgender women find their true voice. Zoey was also a talented songwriter who through her music was able to tell her stories. She loved her theatrics on stage and in the studio as a voice actress. She also would post songs and storytime videos on her YouTube channel that are still available to watch to this day.
Sup guys?
Just kidding. Sup, y'all. I am back.
Zoey unfortunately passed away on April 30th, 2024 to an autoimmune disease she had been fighting for a very long time. I asked my friend Jane, who knew Zoey personally, if she had any words she'd like to share about Zoey, and this is what she had to say. What can I say of Zoey? She really believed in trans people standing together for each other. She put others before herself. She was there asking how I felt while dealing with her illness and difficulties. She was one of a kind, and her channel dedicated to help other trans women with their voices. I know some people may be asking, why am I talking about Zoey in this video? But it is for a very good reason. Without her talents bringing my favorite character to life, I don't know if I would even be nearly as drawn to them, let alone even making this video in the first place. Going back to when the character had released, in the period of time of Zoey's passing shortly after, parts of the social media side of the Dead by Daylight community and even people who aren't a part of the community had shown a very dark and disgusting side of themselves. There was a lot of transphobia, a lot of threats, and horrible things that would hurt anyone to have directed at them, and during this period of time to even after Zoey's passing, this cruelty didn't stop. It hurt to see the lengths people were going out of their way to be so hateful. And with all this negativity at the time, I wanted to do something positive in Zoey's name, and from that day she'd passed, I played nothing but The Unknown for over 2 weeks straight, spreading a positive message to everyone I met during that time. Playing The Unknown for me has been more than just playing my favorite Dead by Daylight character. While I personally didn't get the honor to meet Zoey for myself, I'm always happy to play the character she voiced, because even now, over a year later, I've reached #1 on the leaderboards with them, and I've had so much playtime, and never once do I get tired of hearing those same voice lines of hers. I have met so many amazing people over this last year that share a lot of the same love for the character and Zoey herself. And I want to include a section in this video about her because of how much positive impact she's had on me, and many others, and hopefully you too. If you made it all the way to the end, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so very much for watching, and I hope you learned some things. If you haven't already, please drop a like, subscribe, drop a comment below, whether you're asking a question, telling me what you think of things, helps a ton. And definitely check out the Twitch channel over at twitch.tv/honestpanda. Definitely would love to have you there. We're on Monday to Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern to usually whenever we want to end. I also want to give a huge thank you to my friends Cherry Cola, Only Fig, Cake, Plague Grenade, and Mr. Hanky for helping me and spending hours in custom games recreating chases and other scenarios for the video. My friend Revium for his favorite build, and my friend Wisfell for advice of what things to include, as well as the awesome render in the thumbnail. Also a big thank you to my amazing community and my friends that have been super supportive and excited to see this video come to life. And most importantly, you, the viewer, watching right now. Thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing morning, afternoon, night, or whatever time it might be for you, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, everyone, and have a good one.